To stay on track during the sale and make sure that you're achieving progress towards a specific decision date, it's really helpful to ask the customer to confirm the key milestones in their internal decision process, which will lead up to the final decision date where they award one supplier the contract to do business with them. Now, as a thought leader in your space, a company that does projects like this all the time, you probably have some opinion about what key milestones there should be from your side. Because the customer might be thinking about it in terms of, we're going to meet the suppliers, we're going to evaluate them upon certain criteria, we might ask for customer testimonials, we might actually want to go and visit an installation of their products and services and see how it's working in the right environment. And then we might need some proposals or presentations from the suppliers. Then we'll do an evaluation, decide which ones are on the short list, do a final negotiation, and then award the contract. So that might be part of their evaluation process. But there might be other steps in there. For example, once the evaluators have made their recommendation of which suppliers they think could be compliant and good partners to be in business with, what do they then do with that evaluation? Who do they pass it to? Does it go to a decision maker? If so, does that decision maker have the budget to make the decision and the authority to make the decision to go ahead right away? If so, that's good to know. But what if they don't? What if that decision maker needs to take the decision to a final point of review to an executive committee or to somebody higher up who actually has the power of veto over that decision, somebody who's possibly been around longer, somebody who has a trusted track record, or somebody who has subject matter experience in areas that have to do with what it is that you're selling? Well, it might be that that will elongate the decision process. So it's really helpful for you to know what are all the different points of sign-off that the customer must go through internally, as well as the typical project path that they take between meeting with potential suppliers and deciding to buy from one. Now, at the same time, there's something else that's looming on the horizon. That is, if there's a trigger date by which time they must have a solution in place, all of these things have to happen between now and then. So it's a great technique to ask the customer to confirm the date in the future by which they need to have the decision made. If you think of a Gantt chart or a project plan, most of the time we build them from left to right. It's an interesting approach to build it the other way round. That is, on the right-hand side, you start with the critical date by which point the customer needs to see the solution in place and working in their business. You backtrack from that to find the decision date that they will be contracting with a supplier. And you backtrack from that to the current date, today's date. Next to that, you write down all of these decision points and the milestones that they must pass through between now and being able to give the award of that contract. Now, let's say that there's 9 weeks between now and that critical launch date. And let's say that there's 18 items that have to be done in their decision process. That's 2 items per week that must be scheduled to be happening, signed off, and moved forward from if the customer is going to achieve that date. It's really helpful as a salesperson to map this out with the customer to help them understand how critical it is to achieve certain dates without there being any slippage, and what the effect of some of that slippage would be on them being able to achieve that final decision date. Now, of course, if there's a soft reason to act, in fact, it doesn't really matter if they make a decision by a certain date or not, this won't really matter so much to them. They could keep elongating their decision for as long as it takes. But if through your skill as a salesperson or through the customer circumstance, you've identified that there is a hard date by which they must take action or there are negative consequences, this is great for you as a salesperson because it creates pressure on the customer to take action, all of the actions, some of which are dependent on other things happening before them, so that all of it happens as a coordinated project plan. Showing this in a visual map to the customer can be very compelling to help them understand why certain things must happen before certain dates. Now, because you sell solutions like this all the time, when the customer confirms their decision process and their key milestones to you, you also have a right to look at this list and decide if you agree with it or not. Because through your expertise, you might find that perhaps there's 2 or 3 items which could be grouped into one event through your processes. Perhaps you have methods of helping customers see things or learn things or do things during their evaluation process which streamline the whole approach for them. They're not aware that you can do it, but it's worth showing them what the value might be if they could take 18 activities and actually crush it into 10 activities which are much easier to achieve using your assistance as the project leaders. And this is how some salespeople put themselves in a position of not being outside the wall looking in, but they put themselves inside the decision process with the customer as co-architects of that evaluation process. And this can be extremely powerful, because imagine if you're controlling that evaluation process and the dates in the calendar, the customer will be meeting with you at key dates when they're available, not with your competitors. Your competitors will also need to be following a timetable that you've agreed, where you're in control of making sure that you have your presentations at the optimal time of day, that you're meeting with people when their calendars are free. It makes it more difficult for competitors to meet with certain people if you're already occupying all the prime dates in the calendar. So think about identifying what are the dates between now and when the customer has to act, and how can you help re-engineer those dates using your expertise so that the customer can agree, yes, let's do these things on these dates, let's group these activities together, right? Because you've shown them and proven that it's a good idea to do that, so that you're in a position to re-engineer this evaluation process that they're going through. That will give you such control, and as a result of control, you sell more.